The palace was quiet in the days after the attack. The broken walls had been repaired, the burned banners replaced, but the fear still hung in the air. Lysaria walked the halls with her head high, though the lines on her face showed her worry. Jackson stayed close, watching for signs of more danger. The human diplomats had returned to their ship to report back. Peace was still possible, but trust had been shaken. Lysaria knew that everything now depended on how her own people viewed her choices. The court had called for a special hearing. Some nobles wanted to question the Empress directly. They said she had gone too far by protecting a human. They said she had lost sight of her duty. Meryl met Jackson in the garden. She looked tired. "They want to test her again," she said. "After everything she did, power does not forget, and it does not like change. What can I do? Nothing. This is her battle." But Jackson didn't believe that. He knew Lysaria was strong, but she had carried too much alone. He couldn't sit and do nothing. The great hall was full when the hearing began. Nobles lined the walls. Generals stood at the front. The floor was polished like glass, and the air was thick with whispers. Lysaria stepped forward. She wore her old armor, the one she had worn in her first war. She looked powerful, but also calm. A noble named Sorth spoke first. "Empress, you have shown kindness to an outsider. You have risked the safety of our people." "Why?" Lysaria stood tall. "Because I saw something in him that I had not seen in a long time. Truth, honor, the will to protect others." Another noble shouted, "He is not one of us. He does not belong." "But he bled for us," Lysaria replied. "He stood in front of a blade, meant for me. What more must he do to be seen as more than a stranger?" A third voice asked, "And what of our future? Will humans now walk our halls? Will we serve them too?" Lysaria stepped forward. "No, we will stand beside them, as equals, as allies, not as servants." Murmurs filled the hall. Suddenly, Jackson stepped into the center. He hadn't been called, but he didn't care. "If I may speak," he said. The nobles gasped. Some guards moved, but Lysaria held up her hand. "Let him speak," she said. Jackson turned to the crowd. "I didn't ask to come here. I crashed. I survived because of you. And I never thought I'd stay. But then I saw who you were. I saw how you fight, how you love your people. And I saw her, not just as a ruler, but as someone who wants peace." He looked at Lysaria. "She could have sent me away. She could have let me die. But she didn't, because she believes in something better." "So do I." The hall was silent. Then Sora said, "Words are not enough." Lysaria stepped beside Jackson. "Then let action speak. I will send him back to his people. He will carry our message. If they return with peace, we move forward. If not, we will be ready." Jackson felt a pain in his chest. He didn't want to leave, but he knew it was the right thing. After the hearing, Lysaria met him in the garden. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes, I did. I won't let you fight alone." She looked at him for a long time. "You will leave soon?" He nodded. "I guess I will." They sat on the stone bench. The stream bubbled quietly beside them. The light from the sky dome made her hair shine. "Will you come back?" she asked. "If you want me to." "I do." He took her hand. "Then I'll return." The next day, preparations were made. A small shuttle would take Jackson to the border where a human ship waited. He carried a sealed message from Lysaria, one that asked for peace and offered trust. As the ship prepared to launch, many stood by to watch. Some nobles, some guards, even the students from the Hall of Stars. Lys Aria stood at the base of the ramp. "I still think you're too bold," she said, "and I still think you're too serious." She looked up at him. "One last time. Say it." Jackson smiled. "Hey, Beauty Empress." She narrowed her eyes. "Watch your mouth, human." They both laughed. Then she stepped closer and placed her hand on his chest. "Be safe. You too." He climbed the ramp. The door closed behind them. Arya watched the ship rise into the air, its light fading into the stars. And for the first time in years, she felt something new. Hope. Jackson sat in the pilot's seat of the shuttle. He looked out at the moon below, at the palace he had grown to care about, at the people he had come to understand. He touched the stone in his pocket, the one from the stream in the garden. "I'll be back," he whispered. The stars stretched ahead, and his heart once more began to race. The council room was filled with tension. Nobles, commanders, and court scholars sat in silence. A large screen stood at the front, ready to connect with the human fleet. Jackson stood to the side, his hands behind his back. Lysaria sat in her high chair, dressed in ceremonial robes instead of armor. Everyone waited. The signal came. The screen flickered and then lit up with the face of a human ambassador. He wore a dark suit and had gray at his temples. His voice was calm. "This is Ambassador Keller, speaking for the Earth Alliance." Lysaria spoke next. "I am Lysaria of the Nurian Empire. I welcome your voice." The room remained still. Jackson watched both sides carefully. No one wanted war, but fear was still present. The ambassador continued. "We have received reports from Lieutenant Jackson Rayner. We understand that he has been treated with care. We are thankful." "He earned that care," Lysaria replied. Keller nodded. "We wish to understand each other, to prevent more bloodshed. Then let us speak not as rulers, but as people." They talked for an hour. They shared ideas, concerns, and hopes. The court listened. Some faces showed doubt. Others began to relax. At the end, Keller said, "May we meet in person?" Lysaria looked at Jackson. "Do you believe we are ready?" Jackson nodded. "Yes, I think we are." She turned back to the screen. "Then we welcome your voice and your presence." The screen faded. The room was silent. One noble stood. "This is a risk, Empress." "Yes," she said, "but one worth taking." After the meeting, Jackson walked with Lysaria through the hall. Guards followed at a distance. "That went better than I expected," Jackson said. "It was only the first step. Many still do not trust. They will." She stopped. "Will you return with them?" He paused. "Do you want me to?" Her eyes searched his face. "I do not know, but I would miss your voice." Jackson smiled. "Then maybe I'll stay a little longer." Later that night, a quiet celebration was held. It wasn't loud or filled with music, but there was food, soft lights, and talk of peace. Jackson sat with Merrill and a few young students. They asked questions about Earth again, laughing when he explained snowball fights. Arya watched from across the room. Her advisors came and went, speaking softly in her ear, but her eyes always returned to Jackson. The next morning, Lysaria met with her generals in the war chamber. The map showed new movements. Some outer forces were still hostile. Not everyone in the Empire agreed with her. One general said, "They call you weak." "Let them speak," Lysaria replied. "Peace takes more strength than war." Jackson joined her after the meeting. "You look tired," he said. "I am, but I cannot stop now." "Then let me help." She looked at him. "You already have." Over the next few days, Jackson helped plan the human delegation's visit. He showed Merrill and the guards how to greet humans in their way, what gestures meant peace, and what to avoid. He even taught them to smile gently. Merrill said, "We do." "Not you smiles much." "Well, you might start," he replied, but not all were happy. In the shadows of the palace, some planned to strike again. A noble named Varine, once loyal to Lysaria, gathered his allies. "The Empress has lost her way," he said. "She lets the humans speak like a prince." One asked, "What shall we do?" "We remind her who holds power," Varine said. The plan was simple. During the arrival of the humans, they would cause chaos. Blame would fall on the guests, and the court would turn back to fear. The day came. A human shuttle landed on the outer platform. Soldiers and diplomats stepped out slowly. Jackson stood beside Lysaria as she welcomed them, Everything seemed calm. Then, a flash dot and explosion shook the hall. Smoke poured in. Guards shouted. Some nobles ran. Jackson pulled Lysaria down as another blast hit the far wall. "It's a trap!" Someone yelled. Jackson saw Vereen in the smoke, holding a weapon. "Down with the human!" He shouted. Jackson jumped forward, tackling Vereen. The weapon fired into the ceiling. They struggled, fists and elbows. Vereen was strong, but Jackson had learned how to fight rough. A guard shot Vereen in the leg, and he fell. The smoke cleared. The human stood back. Unsure. Ly's Arya stood tall. "This was not our way. This was the act of fear." She pointed at Vereen. "He will answer for this." The court watched. Some angry, some ashamed. Jackson helped one human diplomat up. "You okay?" "Yes, that was close." Lysaria turned to her people. "We were almost lost again, but we held. And now we move forward." The rest of the visit was quiet but strong. Talks continued. Trust began to grow. That night, Jackson sat in the garden again. His hand was bandaged. His face had a cut. But he smiled. Lysaria joined him. "You saved us again," she said. "I was just in the way. You keep standing in the way, human. Even when it is dangerous." He looked at her. "Because you matter to me." She sat beside him. The garden lights glowed softly. "And you matter to me," she said. He reached out slowly. She took his hand. No one spoke. They just sat there, holding hands under the stars. And Jackson's heart raced again. The palace felt different after the meeting. Jackson noticed it first in the way the guards moved. They watched him with careful eyes again, like they had at the start. The friendly nods were gone. The hallway seemed colder, the air more tense. Even the soft lights of the palace felt dimmer. Jackson sat in the garden, trying to find peace. The sound of the small stream usually helped, but today his mind was too full. He thought about Lysaria's words, her promise to fight for him. He wondered if she was in danger because of it. Meryl joined him, carrying a small book. "This is a story from our people," she said. "It speaks of two stars that came close in the sky but never touched." Jackson took the book and opened it. The drawings were simple, full of curves and bright colors. "Sound sad?" he said. "Sometimes stories are warnings. Sometimes they are mirrors. And sometimes they're just stories," Jackson replied. Meryl didn't answer. She stood and walked away. Later that day, Lysaria called him to the war chamber. A large table in the center showed a glowing map of nearby stars. Generals stood around it, their faces grim. Lysaria looked at Jackson. "We received a signal. A human ship entered our sector." Jackson stepped closer. "Is it looking for me?" "It does not say, but it has asked to speak. They use peaceful tones. You don't trust them? Trust is not given. It is tested." Jackson nodded. "Let me talk to them. I can help." One of the generals growled, "We should destroy the ship. End this." "Now," Lysaria raised a hand. "We will speak first." A few hours later, Jackson stood beside Lysaria in the communication room. The signal connected, a screen lit up. A human officer appeared, his face surprised to see Jackson. "Lieutenant Rayner, are you alive?" "Yeah, I crashed, but I'm fine. These people helped me." The officer glanced at Lysaria. "Is that the leader?" "Yes, this is Empress Lysaria." The officer gave a polite nod. "We came for you. There's talk of peace." "Command wants to explore it." Jackson turned to Lysaria. She said nothing, just looked at the screen. "What happens now?" Jackson asked. "You will help arrange a meeting," she said. "But first we must handle our own troubles." Trouble came faster than expected. That night, a loud alarm rang through the palace. Jackson jumped from his bed. He ran into the hall and saw smoke rising. Meryl ran past him. "Assassins in the palace. They came for the Empress." Jackson followed. He reached the royal hall and saw guards fighting masked attackers. Energy blades clashed, sparks flying. Lysaria stood at the center, her blade glowing, her eyes sharp. She moved like a dancer, each step a strike, but one attacker slipped through. He rushed toward her back. Jackson didn't think. He ran and tackled the attacker, knocking the weapon from his hand. They struggled on the ground. The attacker punched him hard, but Jackson held on. A guard arrived and finished the fight. Jackson lay on the floor, bleeding from his lip. Lysaria knelt beside him. "You are hurt." "You're welcome," he said. Grinning weakly, she touched his arm. "Why did you do that?" "Because I didn't want to see you die." She looked into his eyes. "You could have died yourself." "Yeah, but I didn't." Guards helped him. He was taken to the healers. The wounds were light, but the pain stayed. That night, Lysaria came to his room. She stood in silence for a moment. "You saved me," she said. "Yeah, I guess I did. You acted without fear. I was scared. I just didn't stop to think." She stepped closer. "You are not just a guest now. You are something more." Jackson swallowed. "What am I then?" She didn't answer right away. She sat beside him. "I cannot explain it. But when I saw you fall, something in me broke." He nodded. "I felt the same. When I saw the blade coming for you." Silence fell between them again. Finally she said, "Tomorrow, we will speak with your people. And the world will watch." Jackson said, "I'll be ready." "So will I." She stood to leave, but at the door, she turned. "Jackson." "Yeah? Thank you." He gave a small smile. "Anytime, Beauty Empress." She narrowed her eyes. "Watch your mouth, human." But this time, her voice was soft, and Jackson's heart raced again. The next morning, the palace was calm, but everyone was alert. The meeting with the humans was hours away. The attack had shaken the court. Some nobles stayed hidden. Others prepared speeches. Lysaria met with her advisors. She made it clear that peace was still the goal. Jackson watched from the side. He saw how she held the room, how her voice carried. He saw strength, but also something more. He saw hope. Meryl came to him. "You changed her, you know." "She changed me too," he said. They walked to the garden one last time before the meeting. The blue trees swayed gently. The stream still flowed. "If this goes wrong," Jackson said, you'll be all right. We must try, even if it is hard. You're brave. So are you." The stars began to shine above the glass dome. Jackson looked up. "2 stars," he said. "Coming close, but not touching." He looked at her. "Maybe this time they will." She didn't smile, but her eyes said enough. And together, they walked toward the unknown future. Jackson spent more time outside the cell now. The guards still watched him, but they didn't hold their weapons so tightly. Some even nodded when he passed. Meryl said that was a good sign. He walked in the gardens often, thinking about everything he had learned. But most of all, he thought about Ly's Aria. One morning, Meryl met him by the stream. She looked serious. "The Empress wants you to take part in another ceremony," she said. "Another one? What now?" "It is called the Trial of Stillness. You will be asked questions by the circle of voice. You must speak honestly. You must stay calm." "Sounds easy," Jackson said. "Unless they ask if I like the food here. Do not joke. This is important. They want to see if you are a threat." Jackson nodded. "All right. When does it start?" "Now." He followed her through the palace to a tall round chamber. The ceiling was high, with lights like stars above. 7 tall figures stood in a circle. Their faces were hidden by hoods. Lysaria stood beside them but said nothing. Jackson stepped into the center. The first figure spoke. "Why did you come to our world?" "I didn't plan to. I crashed. I was attacked in space." "Are you a soldier?" "Yes, but I'm not here to fight." Another voice asked, "Do you hate us?" Jackson shook his head. "No, I didn't even know your people existed until a few weeks ago. Would you kill us if ordered to?" Jackson paused. If I had no choice in war, maybe. But now, no, I wouldn't. The voices fell silent. Then the last one spoke. What do you want now? He looked at Lysaria. To stay alive. To understand. To help, if I can. The figure stepped back. Lysaria stepped forward. You have passed, she said. Jackson let out a breath. That was fun. Let's never do it again. That evening, he was allowed to eat in a smaller room with some members of the court. He saw Lysaria speak with generals and nobles. They listened closely. He could tell something was changing. After the meal, she came to him. You have proven yourself again, she said. How many tests do I need to pass before I can leave the cell for good? She smiled slightly. Soon, but not yet. Jackson followed her into the quiet halls. They walked together without speaking for a while. Finally, he said, Do you believe me? Now? That I'm not your enemy? I believe you are honest, she said. But some in the court do not trust humans. I get it. I wouldn't trust us either. She stopped near a wall covered in carvings. It showed battles and victories from long ago. We fought many enemies before. We lost much. I rose to power during dark times. Jackson studied the carvings. You had to be strong. I had to be more than strong. I had to become something they feared. And now? She looked at him. Now I wonder if fear is enough. He nodded slowly. Sometimes respect does more than fear. The next day, Lysaria gave him permission to join a group of young learners in the Hall of Stars. Jackson spoke to them about Earth, about human art and music. They asked many questions. One small girl asked what chocolate tasted like. Jackson laughed and tried to explain. Later, Meryl said, They speak of you with joy. You bring new ideas. I just talk. No, you listen. That is rare here. But trouble was growing. In the shadows of the palace, some nobles whispered about the human. Some said he was using tricks to fool the Empress. Others said he had cast a spell. One night, as Jackson returned to his room, a voice called out, Stop, human. He turned. A tall alien with black armor stood in the hall. Behind him were two others. Can I help you? Jackson asked. You are not welcome. Here, you are poison. The Empress is blind. Jackson raised his hands. Look, I don't want any trouble. The soldier stepped closer. Leave this place, or be removed. Before Jackson could reply, a new voice echoed. Enough. Lysaria walked into the hall. Her eyes burned with anger. You dare threaten a guest of the crown? The soldier lowered his head. Forgive me, Empress. I only seek to protect your name. You protect only your pride, she said. Leave us. Now. They left quickly. Lysaria looked at Jackson. Are you hurt? No, just shaken. I will not allow this again. Jackson looked into her eyes. Why do you keep protecting me? She didn't answer. He stepped closer. Is it because of what I said? Before? About you being beautiful? Her face remained still, but her eyes shifted. You should rest, she said, then turned and walked away. That night, Jackson couldn't sleep. He lay on his bed thinking, not just about Lysaria, but about everything. The war, the fear, the chance that maybe something good was happening here. The next day, the Empress called a meeting with her closest advisors. Jackson was not invited, but he could hear the distant echoes of argument through the hall. Later, Meryl came to him. She looked troubled. There's talk of sending you away. Back to Earth, back to the border, alone. Why? Some believe your presence causes danger. They fear change. Jackson sighed. Do you think Lysaria will let that happen? I do not know. She is strong, but even she cannot stand alone forever. That evening, he was summoned to the throne room again. Lysaria stood alone at the center. You heard the rumors, she said. Yeah, and I understand. If I'm a problem, I'll leave. She stepped toward him. You are not the problem. They are afraid. But I will not let fear rule this place. Jackson watched her face. Then what will you do? She looked tired but determined. I will show them there is another path. He smiled. You really believe that? She met his eyes. Because of you, yes. And in that moment, something changed between them. Not with words, not with touch. Just in the silence and the way they stood facing each other, Jackson's heart beat faster, but neither of them said what they were truly thinking. Not yet. Jackson woke up in the cell to the sound of soft footsteps. He sat up slowly, expecting another visit from Meryl, but this time it was Lysaria herself. She stood outside the cell, her golden eyes watching him closely. You sleep like a child, she said through the drone. And you sneak like a shadow, Jackson replied. Her lips twitched slightly, almost a smile. Then she stepped back. The door slid open. Walk with me, she said. Jackson blinked. What? No guards? She waited. Jackson stood and followed her. His legs were stiff, but he didn't complain. They walked through a quiet corridor. The walls glowed with soft light. Strange flowers in glass pots opened as they passed. You impressed the council, Lysaria said. With my memories? With your pain, your honesty. Jackson looked down. I didn't plan to show any of that. The veil chooses truth. You cannot lie. To it, they entered a large open space. It was a garden under a glass dome. Tall blue trees reached up to the ceiling. A stream of clear water ran through the center. Flying creatures with bright wings hovered above. You may stay here for a while. Each day, she said. But not beyond this area. Jackson walked to a bench and sat. Thanks. This is better than cold crystal floors. Lysaria didn't sit. She stood beside him, arms crossed. Why did you call me that name? Jackson looked up. You mean Beauty Empress? She nodded. Back home, when someone is strong and graceful, we call them beautiful. It wasn't meant to insult you. She was quiet. Then she said, Here we do not speak like that to rulers. It is seen as mockery. I get it now. Sorry if I offended. You? She looked at him again, her expression softer. You are strange. Takes one to know one, he said with a grin. That night, Jackson returned to his cell, but it felt less like a prison now. The next day, he was allowed to visit the garden again. Meryl met him there. You have made progress, she said. You think? So? The Empress does not speak long with many, especially not humans. Jackson picked up a small stone from the stream. It was smooth and glowed faintly. She still seems hard to read. She has carried much weight for many years. More days pass. Jackson learned more of the Nurian language. He learned how they trained warriors, how they honored their dead, and how they valued silence over noise. He also learned how much Lysaria had given up to become Empress. One afternoon, Lysaria joined him again in the garden. She sat this time, a short distance away. You are healing, she said. Some bruises fade. Some take longer. She looked at the water. Why do you still speak to me in that tone? Because you don't scare me. Not really. She raised an eyebrow. I could order your death. Sure, but if you wanted me dead, you wouldn't have brought me here. She looked at him for a long time. You are bold, maybe foolish, but I think you already know that. Later, Meryl told him that rumors were spreading through the palace. Some said the Empress had become soft. Others said she was planning something strange. You must be careful, Meryl warned. Not all want peace. I don't want to cause her trouble. You already have, but she lets you stay. That means something. The next day, Jackson was invited to a banquet. He was clean, given new clothes, and brought to a grand hall. Alien nobles in rich robes sat at long tables. Music played from crystal instruments. Dishes with glowing fruits and roasted creatures were served. Lysaria sat at the head table. Her eyes met Jackson's as he entered. He bowed his head slightly. He was seated beside a short noble with sharp eyes and a long braid. The human guest, the noble said. Strange choice. Nice to meet you too, Jackson replied. Others watched him with curious stares. Jackson kept his cool. When one noble made a joke about human weakness, Jackson replied with a story about his academy training, how one instructor made recruits carry weights upstairs for hours. Laughter followed. And we thought humans were soft. Someone said. Jackson looked toward Lasaria. She was watching unreadable. After the banquet, she stopped him before he could return to his cell. You handled them well, she said. Just had to show I'm not made of glass. They see you now, not as an enemy, but as something. Else? Still dangerous? Maybe. They walked in silence for a while. Then she said, Tell me of your world. Jackson smiled. Where do I start? The food, the cities, the noise? He told her about Earth's oceans, its forests, its strange animals. She listened. He told her about stars seen from mountaintops, about music played in streets, about laughter in small houses, about sadness too. You miss it, she said. Every day. Would you go back if you could? He looked at her. I don't know anymore. They stopped near a glowing tree. The light made. Her face looked softer. Her armor shimmered. Jackson looked into her eyes. Why do you come here? He asked. To understand. To decide. Decide what? If peace is possible. If humans are more than noise and fire. What do you think? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and walked away. Jackson watched her go. He touched the smooth stone in his pocket, the one from the stream. His heart was racing again. The small scout ship shook as it entered the alien moon's atmosphere. Jackson gripped the controls tightly, trying to stop the spinning. Red warning lights blinked on every screen. He had taken a hit from an unknown ship during patrol, and now had no choice but to land here. The ship groaned as it hit the ground, skidding across the rocky surface before coming to a stop. Smoke filled the cockpit. Jackson coughed and pulled off his helmet. He looked outside through the cracked glass. The sky was deep purple, and strange tall plants swayed in the wind. His legs ached, but he forced himself to move. He grabbed the med kit and his emergency pack, pushed the hatch open, and climbed out. Jackson walked slowly through the thick mist. He didn't know what planet or moon this was. His ship's data was fried. He checked his comms, but there was only static. He was alone. In the distance, he saw something glowing. He moved toward it, limping slightly. As he got closer, he realized it was a structure made of crystal and metal. It stood tall, like a palace from a fantasy story, shining with soft blue and silver lights. Jackson's heart beat faster. Maybe someone could help him, or maybe they would shoot him on sight. He stepped through a wide gate. The air felt warmer inside. Large guards with smooth armor and glowing spears blocked his path. Their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets. One guard raised a weapon. Jackson slowly raised his hands. I come in peace, he said. I just crashed. I don't want trouble. They didn't understand his words, but one guard touched his wrist, and a small drone hovered near Jackson's head. A soft click, and the drone spoke in a rough translation. Identify. Lieutenant Jackson Rayner, Human Earth Alliance, he said. My ship is broken. I need help. The guards looked at each other. Then one turned and walked away. The others motioned for Jackson to follow. He was led through long halls filled with light and strange art. The floor felt smooth under his boots. At last, they entered a wide chamber. A tall figure sat on a throne made of crystal branches. She had long silver hair tied in braids, pale violet skin, and sharp golden eyes. Her armor was elegant, and a flowing dark robe draped over her shoulders. She was the Empress. Jackson took a breath. So, UH. Hey, beauty Empress, he said with a weak smile. There was silence in the hall. The guard shifted. The Empress's eyes narrowed. The drone translated. Her lips curled in displeasure. She stood and walked down the steps. She was taller than Jackson, She looked him up and down with a cold gaze. "Watch your mouth, human," she said. Her voice was firm, and the drone echoed her words in English. Jackson winced. All right. Just trying to lighten the mood." The Empress turned to her guards and gave a command. They grabbed Jackson's arms and dragged him away. He was thrown into a crystal cell underground. The walls glowed faintly. Jackson sat on the floor, rubbing his wrists. "Great job, Jackson," he muttered to himself. "Real smooth." Hours passed. No one came. He ate a small ration from his pack and tried to sleep. The floor was cold. The next morning, a soft hum filled the room. A different figure entered. She was shorter, wearing a robe instead of armor. Her face was calm. "You are awake," she said through the translator drone. "Yeah, not exactly a 5-star stay," Jackson replied. She tilted her head. "You joke in danger. Strange. The Empress is not pleased with you." "Yeah, I notice," he said. "You called her beautiful. That is not proper here. I meant it as a compliment. Where I come from, it's not an insult." She nodded. "Still, the Empress will decide what to do with you." Over the next days, Jackson was visited by this woman again. Her name was Merrill, a court translator and teacher. She explained parts of their language, culture, and rules. Jackson listened and learned. He asked questions. He told stories about Earth. Slowly, they understood each other better. Merrill told him the moon was called Evella, part of the Nurian Empire. The Empress Lysaria ruled this region. She was known for her strength and strict rule. One day, Merrill said, "The Empress watches you. She wants to know your truth." Jackson laughed softly. "She's still mad about the beauty thing?" Merrill didn't smile. "She is not used to such words. They confuse her." Later that day, guards came and took Jackson again. He was brought to a chamber with a tall glowing circle in the center. Lysaria stood there, dressed in ceremonial armor. Her face was unreadable. "You will enter the memory veil," she said. Dr. Drone explained. It was a truth ceremony. The veil would show pieces of his past, his emotions, and his honesty. Jackson hesitated. "You want to see my memories?" "Only the ones the veil chooses," Lysaria said. He stepped forward and stood in the center. Light wrapped around him. Suddenly, images flashed in the air. A young boy crying as his father left for war. A teenage Jackson in training, bruised, and TIRED, a battlefield with smoke and fire, friends lost. The crash, the fear, the loneliness. The aliens around the room watched in silence. Lysaria stood still, her eyes fixed on the images. Then the light faded. Jackson stood there, breathing hard. "Happy now?" Lysaria didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, "You fight to live, not to conquer." "Yeah, I didn't ask for this war. I just followed orders." She nodded slowly. "You will return to your cell." Jackson didn't argue, but as he turned to leave, he looked back at her. "For what it's worth, Empress, I meant what I said. You are beautiful. Just not the way you think." She didn't answer. Back in his cell, Jackson sat on the floor and stared at the glowing ceiling. His heart was still racing.